Hey there folks, welcome to episode 44 of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. My name is Rob Woods and this is the show for anyone who works in charity fundraising and who wants ideas for how to raise more money, enjoy their job and make a bigger difference. And if you'd like ideas to help you more confidently embrace very difficult or even impossible seeming challenges in this demanding fundraising environment in 2020 and 2021, I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Because today I'm talking to Max Newton, who's Head of Community Fundraising at the UK homelessness charity Shelter. I first met Max 4 years ago when he took part in our Corporate Partnerships Mastery programme. Max is a brilliant, innovative fundraiser, but that's not the only reason I wanted to share his ideas on the podcast. Over the last 8 months, I've found it fascinating and encouraging to watch the positive way that Max and his colleagues at Shelter have responded to the challenges of 2020. But to me, the story starts around a decade ago, when Max quit smoking and took up running. In time, he progressed to running ultramarathons, and over the years, he's found that the lessons he's learned by doing these extraordinary challenges have also helped him as a professional fundraiser. Here's the first part of our interview. Max Newton, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's budgeting season, so it is fun.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you've been enjoying that process. And thank you for taking a break from it to do this interview with me. Just to set it up, you've been a fundraiser for many years. You are the head of community fundraising at Shelter. And I think you and I met when you were a community fundraising manager at the British Red Cross. And
It was when I was a community fundraiser at the British Red Cross.
Okay. And we've enjoyed various interesting conversations over the years. The one I particularly want to talk about today, we are going to talk about fundraising and leadership to an extent, but the particular reason I got you onto this podcast interview was to do with one of your hobbies, which is ultra running. And some of the things that you've learned through that hobby that you have noticed have also helped you as a leader and a manager and as a fundraiser. So just to get us into the right zone, what is ultra running? Briefly, how did you get into it? And then if you could lead on to this latest crazy feat you did, which was the Tunnel Ultra.
Cool. So ultra running is usually running anything over 30 miles, but could be many, many more miles. I got into it by I gave up smoking, needed to do some running to make up for that. Did a half marathon, got sponsored. Did a marathon, got sponsored. And I thought, well, they know that I can run that distance now, all my sponsors, all my friends. So how do I get more money out of my friends and family? And then I discovered that a run that was from London to Brighton for 56 miles. And consequently, every year since then, I've needed to go further or crazier in order to be able to ask my friends for money for the charity, and also to challenge myself and push my boundaries and get a feeling of excitement from doing something different and challenging. And so the latest one was the Tunnel Ultra, which was 200 miles back and forth in a cold, dark tunnel with no headphones, no outside support. And had to run it in 55 hours was the time limit, which meant no sleep whatsoever. And the previous year was the first year it had been run, and 40 people started and only 2 people finished. So I thought that sounds like something that will get people interested in sponsoring me, and that sounds like something that I don't think I can do. So let's go for it. And I finished.
Yeah. So where did you place?
I was the 4th finisher in 50 hours and something. You lose track of time a little bit, but it was within the time limit. There's only a few times where I was falling asleep whilst running. It was an amazing experience. Got to do a bit of thinking, but also thinking about nothing for quite a bit of time, and raised a nice amount of money for the British Red Cross.
Yes, and I can vouch for the power of choosing something that's just a bit different or a bit harder than people think one should be capable of doing, and the effect that has, given that your main motivation you've talked about so far has been how could I get more sponsorship money, the effect that has on someone who might be willing to sponsor you, it absolutely worked, because you let me know in advance, and I think I sponsored you just before you started, which was at Friday tea time on a Friday, and then I set off running, and I think I just I may have mentioned it to my family, but I remember getting up on the Saturday morning at a little, I was a bit annoyed that I'd woken up earlier than I wanted to on a Saturday morning, and mildly grumpy at 7:30 or whatever. And I at some point I checked what was going on social media, and it just jolted me that I'd had my 7 hours sleep or whatever, and you'd had not a single moment's sleep, and you'd run so far 2.5 marathons or something, and you still had another, whatever it was, 140 miles to go, 150 miles to go. And I tried to get my head around that truth. And as I was trying to do that, I explained it to my son, and he said, "What? I thought the most you're allowed to run is a marathon. Isn't that 26 miles? And just the two of us, we felt that our understanding of the limits of how much a person can run for, we were just wrestling with that. I'd heard you tell me 200 miles, but it hadn't truly sunk in that you were now going to have to keep going for the further 2 days or whatever. And my whole family on Sunday afternoon kept asking me, how's he doing? How's his knee? He's on the 186 mile mark. And his knee is agony, but his dad said he's going to do his best to finish. And so my whole family cheered when your dad tweeted you'd got over the line 200 miles. And that had several effects. It caused us to sponsor you a second time, including my son wanting to, Daddy, can I sponsor?
From his piggy bank. Yeah.
And on Sunday morning, him deciding to go for he's a sporty boy anyway, but he decided to go for a run. He's never gone for a run before when there hasn't been a ball around. So it just had this effect of capturing our imagination. And I think, so that's part of why I can see how it's enabled you to raise a lot of sponsorship money for good causes over the years. I guess a key thing I want to get into for this interview is, what are some things that the doing of this hobby that most people would flat out say is just not possible, because 26 miles is really hard, maybe 50 miles is hard, but 200 miles with barely sleeping, it's either in the category of extraordinarily difficult, or many people actually, until they heard this interview, may have said it was just not possible. The act of you gradually in the last 8 to 10 years pushing those limits and discovering that these things are possible, I'd like to know what lessons you have learned along the way in this journey. And because I know that they've helped you as a fundraiser and a fundraising leader. So over to you, really. What's one of the lessons that you're now a little wiser on than you would have been 12 years ago before you started this hobby?
Yeah, it's good questions. And I think like the one is to take the leap of faith, to look over the parapet at that's something that is scary. And so every time I've signed up for these runs, it's been scary for me and difficult to do. And but it can be done because other people are doing them. So I guess there's sort of two bound up in there. One is sort of in the workplace, in fundraising and in leading a team. There's, we could make incremental increases in our income budget, by 3% year on year, or we could really go for something. We could go for transformational change. We could, really seek out that partnership that will create something really, really massive for the organization and immeasurably help the lives of so many more people. But that's scary because that's sort of almost like trying to bust out of what the organization, the sector, society says are the limits, the maximum that you can do. And yeah, they're artificially imposed limits and restrictions. And yeah, we've definitely seen that with some of the big emergency appeals that we had at the British Red Cross. And right now we're talking about transformational change, and that's quite scary. And like, how much money do you need? How many hundreds of thousands of pounds do you need to create this huge transformational change in your department? And that's quite scary because that's not what I've been used to. So right now I'm sort of leaning on the lessons learned from taking a leap of faith, but obviously with planning and good reason and etc. And I think very much related to that, like I said, there are other people doing it. And a real key thing in terms of the ultramarathon running and in fundraising, in leadership, in life, I guess, is who are I think you would call them the bright spots. So who are the people that are already doing it? Who are the people that are showing that these limits aren't the limits that you can do, whether it be running or anything else? And how did they get there? How could they, part is gives you confidence that, you're not the first person ever to do this, and you won't be in almost anything that we do.
So is that something you deliberately did, and it helped you in the early stages of trying to run further? You sought people who were already doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's like I say, there's lots of people that are already doing it. There's books that are written. There's films to watch. I could send you a link of 50 greatest films about ultramarathon running that are all available on YouTube, if you like. Some of which are watchable. And so there's like the amazing people that are smashing it out of the park and that are doing like running the length of New Zealand over 7 days and things like that, which I'm miles away from being. But there's also the people that are running 50, 100, 200 miles that you can pick up the phone and speak to and connect with on Facebook or LinkedIn and chat with and arrange a call with. And ones where it's more, they are pushing they are not being restricted by those artificially imposed limits, but they're not Superman or Superwoman. They are real people and normal people.
So I suppose clearly some of what you're going to get from reading those books, or even if you're fortunate enough to have a chat with one of those people and in some sense they become mentor-like to you, clearly one of the things you get that's valuable is tactics about belief systems or diet or training techniques or equipment or whatever. But I'm sensing, and that's valuable, but the bigger value is you're exposing yourself to a world in which, yes, this is very possible, it's very doable, it's even normal to us. And the more you get references that are contrary to your previous belief that it's not possible, the more everything, more likely to follow through on any of the tactics, because suddenly the possible becomes genuinely possible in your belief system.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely that exposure to it, and it is huge, and also specific tactics and specific things to look for, and but also within those communities, whether it be sort of the running or the fundraising, there's still you will still have the conversations where you go, yeah, but that's ridiculous. But that running event is ridiculous. Like in the at the start of the Tunnel Ultra, you'll all stand around sort of with that sort of gallows humor about how horrible it's going to be, and and so on, and how we'll be going mad and seeing things and so on. And I think in the fundraising world and sort of, I guess, leadership world, there's still things that still, even if you are surrounding yourself with the people that are doing that stuff that seems one step beyond, and I think the thing that I've learned in both of those contexts is to sort of try and find that thing that you enjoy about the challenge.
Yes.
And what would be how amazing would it be if we won this partnership with this organization, even though it's an incredible amount of work to do and stressful and maybe working longer hours and and pulling in lots of other stuff within the organization to come to a head. But just that sort of focus on, like, wouldn't it be amazing if we pulled it off? Like, that would be cool, right? Like, Rob would make another donation, his son would go out running, and that's pretty awesome. And similarly, we would, the value that would have brought to the organization and to people's lives would be tremendous. And that, I think, I found that really helps me through when, like, you're slogging over budgets or slogging over miles in the tunnel, or anything else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So I have understood there's a paradox. If you just go for quite a long run or a 3% incremental increase in how much you can raise compared to last time, on the good side is, it seems very manageable and you've got a good chance of hitting. The odds are in your favor. The bad side is it's unlikely to unlock this extra excitement that comes, that is the flip side of scary.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
As long as we can find a way to live with the scary long enough, we get the massive extra dopamine hit of the exciting. And the tactic I'm hearing you do is there may be various things about these very long runs which are not exciting to you, but your tactic is, what is it about this new challenge, be it a fundraising or a running challenge, that I could get excited about? And ask yourself for that, the more you tend to find something that for you pulls you on, gets you excited enough to, really go the extra mile, forgive the pun, and just do something different and better. And that's where lots of the juice is, because you're really feeling that bit more alive, because now it's an exciting challenge. Yeah,
and I think that's like exciting and good for me. But also, like you mentioned earlier, with like yourself sponsoring me twice, thank you very much, and your son sponsoring and going for a run. But like it's exciting for the people as well. Like you watch, I know there's a thing in ultramarathon running about dot watching, so you can log in and watch the dot and see how far somebody's gone, which must be terribly, terribly boring, but perhaps not as boring as running through a tunnel. But like I know Paul Amardi, who's the head of director of fundraising at the Red Cross, was at a big ball in Edinburgh while I was doing it. I know that while he was sat at dinner, he was watching the dots on his phone to see how I was doing. And I guess that translating that into fundraising, I'm head of community fundraising. Community fundraising is not usually seen as the most exciting type of fundraising in an organization. We find it really difficult often to be able to explain what we do to our fundraising colleagues, let alone non-fundraising colleagues or externally. So having something that is a big, challenging, potentially transformational thing, in the same way that the tunnel run pulls in lots of interest and excitement from friends and family and colleagues and so on. So setting your stall out with a big transformational income target and project in community fundraising excites other parts of the organization, excites my colleagues in the corporate team, in philanthropy, in the comms and media, and service colleagues to buy into it and go for it as well. And I think when we're talking in community fundraising, less about Mrs. Miggins collection tins and more about a £250,000 partnership with another organisation that we were successful with winning, that's very different. It's very different. It just creates more opportunities and more avenues to raise more money and to build more relationships.
Hi, it's Rob, and I wanted to jump into the middle of this episode really quickly to tell you about something I'm so excited about, which is the way that our Bright Spot Members Club has been helping fundraisers to not only survive, but also to do really well, to raise funds so effectively during the pandemic. Through the club, our 300 members get access to a whole library of my best training films, as well as regular live coaching sessions to help you handle whatever challenges are coming at you each week. And we've also found that handling these challenges has not just been about getting the right advice or strategy, it's also been about morale. And we've found that the encouragement and help that our members get from each other has really helped them to stay positive. If you're not yet a member, but you'd like to find out more, go to brightspotmembersclub.co.uk/join. That's brightspotmembersclub.co.uk/join. I would love to welcome you to the club and do my utmost to help you succeed in your fundraising. For now though, back to the session. And I wanted to ask Max what he's learned about creating buy-in from other people to new ambitious challenges.
So congratulations, by the way, on the success of that huge partnership you and your team won recently, I gather. And I think this is some of why I wanted you on the podcast, because I've noticed that because you've got better at doing these things of embracing the very difficult and A, getting yourself excited about it, and then B, managing to get others excited rather than, oh, it's too difficult. I've noticed that you bring some of those skills and belief systems and it helps you raise more money and, for instance, win this enormous partnership worth more than £200,000 over at least a couple of years, I think. So is there anything else you've learned about how to communicate the excitement of a thing and help people overcome the belief that it's scary or not possible?
Yeah, I think it's like I'm not perfect with that, and my team's like we're not perfect with it. You know, it's a journey. It's always a journey, and yeah, it's always a journey and a place, but we know where we want to get to, I guess. So I guess quite a bit of that is around like bounce back ability and grit. I think the whole lockdown situation is felt, I think, for many people out there, like running through a tunnel for 55 hours in the dark. And I remember towards the start of lockdown, a colleague said that she couldn't, it's just really, really difficult, couldn't see the wood for the trees. There's just like so much to do, so much uncertainty, so much. Yeah. And actually that's the time for me when, so some of the runs that I've done, I think have included running around a 400 meter athletic track in 24 hours. So to see how far you could run in that time. And whenever I told people about that, they would be like, you must be crazy. You would go mad. You know, what would you think about? How would you stop yourself getting bored? Excuse me. And because there's also no headphones rule, which seems to be a thing. But actually the when you focused on the excuse me, the big, almost unobtainable prize at the end, whether that be running for 24 hours around a track, running across Scotland, running in the tunnel, getting to the end of lockdown and still being able to raise some money and still having a team, feels so out there and unobtainable. It can be, I think it can be crippling. I think it's why the England football team always seem to panic and almost like die and lose to Iceland, because they think, we're here, we have to win the World Cup. We have to win the World Cup. If we don't win the World Cup, we're going to get slaughtered by the media when we get home. Whereas the British cycling team don't focus on how to win the gold medals and how the glory or the failure. They focus on, if I turn my pedals around 38 times a minute as opposed to 35 times a minute, we'll get there. So there's that bit of like having some processes and planning and trusting in those processes and planning. And it's all very well, like when things are going bad and when things are when the world's been turned upside down, or when you are really stressed at work or running, and in physical and emotional pain, that's when you need the plans. That's when the plans come into effect. You're not making it up on the hoof. You're that if I'm falling asleep whilst running, I need to sit down, a cup of tea, a pot noodle, and then I'll be fine. Like, you've got that built in. And I think really important to have those built in as a fundraising leader, and especially during these times of having those plans of what to do when things go weird and wrong. But back to the woods for the trees was to not focus on the seemingly never-ending pandemic or tunnel, but to actually go from tree to tree. So in the running terms, is just actually lap to lap is fine. Usually when you've got such a big target miles and miles away, you break it down into pieces anyway in order to get there. And in those runs, it was already done for you. So when me and my now ex-colleague chatted, we sort of say, well, actually, let's just go from tree to tree. Let's just pick it from tree to tree for now. And, trust our instincts, trust our data. And that's the way to get through it, and not get crippled by the big prize or the daunting objective.
Yes. And at the moment, are you literally saying that means you run your day, just try and make this meeting go as well as I can, or meet that deadline by lunchtime? Or are you when you say tree to tree, are you focusing, let's just handle this week rather than worry about this whole quarter's worth of pandemic related pain? How do you do the tree to tree technique to quite deliberately focus your thinking? What are the units you tend to use?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's important to have a strategy and a strategy for different situations, and then really trust the strategy, because the tree to tree are the meetings and the conversations, the bits to get there. So in practical terms of sort of ordering the day, it might be like that. Actually, some days I'm not thinking about the big picture and the big stuff, because we've done that. We've done that bit of thinking. We need to park that bit of thinking, and I need to speak to my assistant director about this. I need to sort this with finance. I need to delegate these tasks. I need to speak with Rob, and so on and so on.
Yes,
mapping those out, I guess. And
yes,
we had quite a good example, I think, when at the start of lockdown, with the 2.6 challenge that was launched to sort of replace lost event money. And here at Shelter, we decided it would sit with community fundraising, and I think we had like 10 days to turn it around from when it was announced or something like that. And we could have gone, actually, that's impossible. We can't do it. It can't, an organization like Shelter can't turn around, getting the data lists of people to contact, of emailing, of paid and organic social, of the buying for things, because there's a process, there's there's planning meet, and so on and so on and so on. But we went for it, and once we'd decided we're going for it, that's once you've taken that leap of faith, we've taken it, right? And then we're committed. And so we mapped out, what are the steps, what are the specific steps that we need to do, who are the conversations I need to have with the right people at the right level to bypass that process, to bypass the limitations, that because that's not how this organization works, to getting all that comms out really quickly, to getting the support journey stuff set up, to really amplifying the way we look after people. And for us, it was really, really successful. And I think that was, we could have shriveled under the fear of that unobtainable thing. We could have got really stressed and stuck. But I think once we'd set the target and then worked out what are the tree to trees, what are the steps, then what I need to do is get the next one done, and let's worry about the others afterwards. But let's get that one in, get that one done, and then the next.
Thank you so much, Max, for all your ideas, your stories, your advice. I need to finish the interview very soon, but I really appreciate the time you've given to this, and I look forward to hearing about your next run in due course and your next fundraising exploits. But until the next time, Max Newton, thank you ever so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Bye.
Bye.
So I hope you enjoyed hearing Max's take on how to embrace ambitious challenges. If so, please remember to subscribe to the podcast today, as we've got plenty more interesting sessions lined up for you in the coming weeks. To see a full transcript and a summary of the episode, you can find those on the blog and podcast section of our website, which is brightspotfundraising.co.uk. Today's episode was the first part of a longer session on growing your resilience as a fundraiser that Max and I created for the Bright Spot Members Club. If you're not yet a member and you'd like to find out more about this training and inspiration site for fundraisers, do check it out at brightspotmembersclub.co.uk/join. As well as the regular coaching sessions on a range of fundraising subjects, you can take advantage of the full library of training films and downloads and our super supportive community. If you're curious, you can just join for a single month to test for yourself how helpful these resources are for your fundraising. And if you'd like to get in touch with Max or me, we would love to hear from you. We're both on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, Max is at Maximo Newton with a capital M and a capital N, and I'm at Woods_Rob. Lastly, thank you so much for listening today. I really hope it was helpful. Until the next time, stay safe and good luck with all your efforts to make a positive difference.